Hello and welcome to Talking Live. I'm Dr. Robi Ludwig, right here in Starshop Studio in Times Square. I don't know if many of you know this, but October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So we're very happy to be bringing this show to you during the appropriate month. And it's also the year anniversary for the metoo movement. Today we have a Renaissance woman who is lovely in every single way. She is an actor, she is an artist, and she is now the author of a #1 top seller called Deep Dark Blue, which is a memoir about a very difficult topic. It's about sexual abuse, emotional abuse, right? And it was in the Air Force. Polo Tate is going to tell us her story and going to share what she's doing now to make women who are coming out with this difficult issue so much easier for them to talk about and to heal. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for
I have to
having me.
say, you are an amazing writer.
Wow,
and
thank
you
you.
write in such a poetic way.
Oh,
Did you realize that? Did anyone say that to you?
As a writer, it's such a solitary endeavor.
Yes.
As you well know.
I know.
You're hours alone at your computer. So when you get a chance to see how your words affect somebody, it truly is the most heartfelt compliment. So thank you. I really appreciate that.
When I was reading through your book, I felt really angry. I really did. I noticed feeling angry and upset at the way I felt you were being treated. I mean, I could tell your resilience throughout, but this was a difficult story for me to read. It must have been even more difficult to experience.
It was.
Take us back to that time.
It was, and you're not the first person to say that it was not an easy read for all of those reasons, which I'll take as a compliment, though I hate to bring people into that world. It was the only way that I could tell my story. I had worked since the age of 11, really, to be able to fulfill my dream of going to the Airforce Academy. And I had actually started out, I was an athlete my entire life. I played volleyball, basketball, and soccer. I had really gotten sort of the bug to go to a service academy quite young. And for that, the admission process is, of course, so difficult. I played 3 varsity sports all 4 years of high school, was in National Honor Society. You have to get nominated by a senator to even apply. So the process started early. I never drank. I never did. It was quite a lifestyle choice for somebody who's driven and really wants to serve their country.
And you describe that moment. Everybody can remember having that childhood dream. And you talk about getting those dog tags, right? That's what it's called.
Yes.
And imprinting your dream with so much hopefulness and promise. And to achieve that must have felt amazing.
It was one of the greatest achievements, that moment of dream fulfilled. Still to this day, one of the best ones of my life.
And I could tell from reading the book that you were a rule follower. Very ambitious, but a rule follower.
Very much.
Which must serve you well in some ways, but
Yes.
I could see where it would be problematic under the circumstances you were in.
That's a really astute observation. When you are a rule follower, and the whole mission of basic training is, of course, to break you down so they can build you up into a soldier, break you down as a civilian so they can build you up into a soldier. So when you are broken down and you are a rule follower, boy, does it depend on the people who are leading you. And as naive as I was going into the Air Force Academy, and as driven as much as I wanted to please my superiors, do well, work my butt off so that I could rise in the ranks and be considered a legitimate soldier, I absolutely took orders. And when you are open to that, and when the milieu at the Air Force Academy and at all service academies in the military in general is very hierarchical, which is not a bad thing. We need hierarchy, we need structure, of course. However, it also allows for people to abuse that power if they are damaged,
Right.
hurt people, hurting people.
One of the things you highlight in your story, which I think is so important, is you say this isn't about sex.
No.
Or gender, I should say. I should say gender.
Either. Perfectly said.
Right. Because you had two people, and you call them, you refer to them as horrible him and horrible her, which in alliterative phrase, which was perfect. There were two people who were abusive.
Yes.
But one of the most powerful stories is you talk really about the grooming process of this senior coach who's a woman.
Yeah. She was our team captain. She was everything that I had looked up to as a freshman coming onto an NCAA varsity team. I played volleyball, and it's the consummate team sport for anybody who's played. It's such a beautiful, pure sport in its purest form. It's not a contact sport, so it is quite beautifully orchestrated with rules and with team work, and you can't do anything alone. So the fact that the only senior on our team took me under her wing, I thought that she was mirroring a relationship that I had in high school with the best athlete in our state taking me under her wing, and sort of the best bringing up the next best. And so thinking that, looking forward to getting coached by her, we would go to the gym for hours after practice, and she would set me balls and teach me the ins and outs of the collegiate game. And little did I know that she was isolating me and drawing me away from all of the friends that I loved and all of the safety in numbers. So the grooming process is an insidious and dangerous thing.
Because you talk about the feeling of drowning, really. And I think that's the way many people who are survivors of sexual assault, especially when it has to do with a relationship, that's how it can feel. Because the feeling is, oh, I can handle this, or maybe it's not as bad as I think it is. And then sometimes before it's too late, the difficult person in power really has you in a place you don't want to be.
What you don't realize is the undertow.
Right.
And it's slowly dragging you out so that the shoreline is not even seeable. And you don't realize until you finally look up, you get a chance to actually look up and see that the shore is nowhere in sight and you are drowning, and the only person that's with you is holding your head under the water.
I mean, I just had to highlight some of the words that you mentioned when you talk about, this abuse that went on, because I think it is so beautifully written, poetically written, but also very similar to patients that I've heard or people that I've heard talk about this emotional process. So you talk about feeling caged, emotionally imprisoned, the feeling of drowning. And then you say, was I going to put words to what happened? I've had so many people, especially after the I guess what's been going on culturally, reach out to me and say, Robbie, how could somebody be sexually abused and not say anything? How could they not press charges? Why would they wait so long? And I try to educate them and tell them it's not as simple as you think it is. First of all, it's the only crime where the woman is looked upon like she's the criminal, or in some cases the men, but I think it's primarily women. I mean, basically it's he said, she said, and then you have to prove your rightness. But you talk about, was I going to put my words to what happened? Many victims feel that way. Make it more real. Responsible for destroying the team, for destroying your life. These are the things that Polo talks about in her book about deciding what to do after this one horrendous moment. And you talk about this self-blame and was it your fault, and how this just violated your mind and spirit. And again, that's how so many victims feel.
I think it's interesting that you have I'm sure, droves of clinical experience to sort of substantiate that is a common feeling, because of course when you're going through it, you don't know.
No.
And when something has happened, after the first assault, about 3 weeks later, I was assaulted by a male cadet as well. And he had said it was to try to keep me silent about volleyball team secrets, essentially just to make sure that I kept my mouth shut. So after the second attack, here I am. I'm a driven cadet. All I want to do is go to school. Right. I go into the FBI once I graduate, fly planes, become an officer. All of the things that had led me to become a stellar cadet had also been the primary barrier for me saying a word.
Yeah.
Because the moment I spoke, since nobody knew about it except me and my attackers, the moment I spoke about it was the moment I pulled the pin on the grenade and exploded my life. Their life, my team's life. That's the thinking. You know, you take all that responsibility on yourself, and the moment you speak up is when you think the responsibility falls on you, when in actuality, the moment it happened, I wasn't responsible for that.
Right.
In that moment.
That's exactly
for that
right.
Trauma. But you don't realize that when you're in the solitary confinement of your circumstance.
And it's so true, because I think so many victims blame themselves. Why was I in this place? Was I wearing a sign that said it was okay?
Yeah.
I think we as women especially are used to kind of taking responsibility for other people's inappropriate behavior. And hopefully that's slowly changing. But the good news is you did speak out.
I did.
You did say something. You did press charges.
It wasn't me personally pressing charges. What had happened was I was in the middle of a PTSD disassociative sort of state. And a teammate of mine at the time came in and was like, "What is going on with you? What is happening? You know, like, you used to be this amazing cadet. Now you've pulled away from people. You're just, what is going on?" And so in my sort of disassociative state, I told her about the first attack. And she, of course, feeling the weight of that, took it to our chain of command, and instantly an IG investigation was started, which is an inspector general investigation for all of those not in the military. Okay. And so that was what begun the investigation, which eventually led to a hearing, which eventually led to the first attacker being kicked out.
And she was kicked out for a period of time, but then fought her way back in?
She did.
Did she not think she was guilty, or did she feel entitled? What was that about?
Yes, I think all of those things. And definitely felt as if she was unfairly targeted, question mark. And, you know, I'm sure she was just fighting for her commission and fighting for her life in terms of what she had worked so hard for. My guess, well, who can speculate, but about 2 weeks before her commission, it was overturned by the Secretary of the Air Force at the time, and she was able to fulfill her commission.
That's just mind-boggling to me.
It is.
Well, is it less surprising to you? Were you surprised by that decision?
I'd say I was shocked by the decision.
Okay.
And my mental state at the time was just to survive. I mean, for all of that had happened, for all of the trial and the hearing and having to go in front of a panel of Air Force officers whose brass shone, blinded you with the light that they were reflecting. That was one of the hardest things that I've ever done, is to speak out and say what had happened to a room full of people.
So brave of you, because that's one of the reasons why people don't want to come out when they are survivors of sexual assault.
Yes.
Because the idea of telling their story is re-traumatizing,
Yes.
especially when you're being questioned and looked at with distrustful eyes.
Definitely.
And again, we are now seeing a cultural movement where women and men, just survivors in general, are being listened to in a whole new way. Yeah. You ended up getting out, leaving the academy.
I did.
Getting your degree from Notre Dame.
Yes.
And really going through an aggressive, working through with a professional and getting to a healing process.
Yeah. Thankfully.
Yeah.
Thankfully, because as anybody knows who has been through it, it is not an easy process.
No.
It's a long process.
Right.
You've been on, I'm sure, the other side of multiple occasions where you're looking at this person who seems so broken and so troubled, their heart obliterated, something in their soul is sort of severed, and you have to be the one to help sew them back together. And for me, it was very much, and my time at Notre Dame was not without its folly. So it wasn't smooth sailing until I finally got to New York. I wrote the book, which for me was my catharsis. Being so analytical, I wasn't inclined to just talk about it or, seek somebody out and tell them, burden them, what I thought at the time with my wretched life story. No. But definitely my time in college, I didn't want to put that on anybody, so I wrote.
You're such a kind person, and I just have to say that really comes across. And the fact that you had the strength after everything that happened to you to graduate college, it could have gone a very different way.
Oh, you and I.
Yeah, it could have gone a very different way.
My parents agree with that too.
And you have used your experience for a greater good. Where you really have committed yourself to helping survivors within the military. And you say this is a really dangerous thing because if there are people in the military who have to worry about sexual assault, we're in trouble as a country.
They are not focused on the greater mission at hand. Yeah. They are not focused on doing their job, which is to protect our beautiful country. That is the difference between sexual violence when it pervades all of our beautiful hierarchical structures like Hollywood, college campuses, the Catholic Church. What we're seeing now in this time of awakening, in this really burgeoning time of awareness, there is a difference when it is in the military. And the silver lining of that is that the Air Force Academy and service academies are in a highly controlled environment. So they have this beautiful potential to live up to their mission statement. These bastions of higher learning that incubate tomorrow's leaders today, they have this incredible potential to be the change that this country so desperately needs right now. Because we look to them, we look to the military as really the examples of all of these archetypes: masculinity, warrior mentality, power, structure, all of those things our country looks up to them for. And they have a choice.
Yeah.
So how amazing would it be for them to accept that challenge and to create the first self-sustaining progressive culture based on trust and respect, in which sexual violence and sexual harassment simply cannot exist. How beautiful would that be?
That would be beautiful. And I would like to see them hire you for that, to really assist them in the process.
Thank you for saying that.
Because I think you'd be an amazing counselor and therapist for people who are going through this. I know that you're a comedian and an actress, and also just of note, I was very excited about this because we owned Oldsmobiles as a child. The great-great-granddaughter of the founder of Oldsmobile.
Yes.
Wow.
Ransom Eli Olds.
And you weren't interested in getting into cars at all
as
a child? Okay.
I'm sorry, Mom.
No, that's okay.
I'm sorry, Dad.
That's okay. That's okay. You're committed to really living a joyful life, and you have a hashtag,
do.
right? And you talk about it on your blog
I do.
about no one can take away your joy.
Yeah. Oh, you're making my heart swell so much.
And I was thinking, God, she's a really nice person, because I'm thinking, God, there are things that take away my joy all the time, from long lines to just because. And I'm like, but I'm willing, God, I'll learn and listen. I'll listen and learn.
Well, but see, that's the thing, right? That's the whole idea, is that we go through awful things in this life, and we go through trying things and struggles, and there was a beautiful woman who had knelt down beside me shortly after my sister was killed when I was 7 years old.
How was she killed?
She was killed in a horseback riding accident.
Oh, yeah. How tragic.
It was. It was something that she loved constantly. I don't think I've ever seen that level of passion in somebody to date.
Wow.
So horses were her everything. They were her life. And she wouldn't have wanted to go any other way. But there was a woman, and she's so angelic in my mind, as I remember her. But she knelt down, and of course I was struggling. Half of my heart was gone with my sister's passing. And she said, "No one can take your joy." And in that moment, my 7-year-old brain was like, huh,
Yeah.
But as I grew, as I went to the Air Force Academy and I faced all of these things, it really is the one thing that no one can take from you, unless, of course, you give your consent.
Right.
Unless, of course, you give that away. And listen,
it's worth fighting for.
It's worth fighting for.
It's worth fighting for. And I mean, I support that goal wholeheartedly, because it's, what's the point of going through life if you can't have a really good time? I know this is a switch in topics, but how do you think we're doing in terms of the Me Too movement and getting us forward, in terms of listening to survivors and helping to change how people listen to these stories?
That's such a good question, one that I ask every day too, because I think it's important. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I so appreciate you wanting to talk about it, because I think there's very acute anger and aggression and speaking out right now, and we need that. We need movements like these. We need them to sort of push and pull at our social framework, our cultural framework, so that we can open up space, this beautiful space in which to have a real conversation, a deep discourse on how does our country view power? How does it view sex? How does it view violence? How does it view all of these things? And I think while we push and pull on this social framework, it's important to remember that people are not hashtags, that every case is individual, and every person who has gone through this is a real person with a real life who's gone through something really traumatic. It's important to be there for, as you well know, and I know I've seen you be a champion for people, which is just, it makes my heart swell, because I know you know how to listen, and I know you're right there, and you're there to support with advice. So I think it's so important to just let what they tell you land if somebody is going through a struggling time, and to really come to this larger discourse with the whole movement, all of the movements that are going right now, to really come to it with an open heart and an open mind, and a uniting spirit.
I do like that, and I read in one of your blogs, and I couldn't agree with you more, that we need to look at the why.
Yes.
And I wrote down just some things that really resonated with me, just when it comes to talking about shame, because I think it's mixed with sex and shame and self-blame. We need to help people feel safe.
Yes.
In order to thank them for sharing their story, help them to feel safe, giving them permission and cultural permission to talk about this is so liberating, because shame is systemic. And we've had people who are in control just have questionable ethics, which also makes it challenging. But I think hopefully we're just at the start of
Yes.
helping people share and listening in the right kind of way. And I know you're going to be an important part of that movement. And this book is an important part of this movement. I just want to say, too, there are definitely resources out there. We'll have links for anyone who feels that this story has triggered a memory about their own story to tell, because there are resources out there. And also, we will have a signed book, too, which if you like and share the show, you will be eligible to win. Polo's important memoir. We do something called a quick 5, though, so people can get a little insight into who you are. And so we have 5 questions to ask you. If you had a theme song, what would it be?
I actually...
Do you have one?
It may have gone off in the middle of a silent meeting yesterday.
Oh, yeah?
But my ringtone is the Rocky theme, actually.
Oh, I love that. Yes.
Which is amazing, except if it goes off when it's not
Let me
supposed to.
say, if you're going to make sure that nobody takes away your joy, you're going to need that theme song, definitely. If you could change 3 things about your country, what would you change?
I have to first say that I love these United States, and I love the men and women who serve it. And I studied in Italy for a while in college, and you know, a large part of my heart loves the culture and loves the feeling there. And it was amazing to return home and just to know that we are born with such luxuries and such freedoms. What I would change about it definitely would be, you know, I'm not out to nail the military to the wall, but it is in desperate need of amelioration in a lot of ways.
So hopefully they're hearing your message and they'll hire you to help them out. Just saying. Okay, when you're having a bad day, what do you do to make yourself feel better?
Oh, what a great question. It totally depends on my mood. Working out is a must for me.
Okay.
It's good for my brain. Mani-pedi, a massage, never hurt anybody.
Yes.
Listening to music, having a dance party.
Those are good things.
Yeah.
Especially the mani-pedi, but I'm just, no, it's all good. It's all good. What's the most spontaneous thing you've ever done?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I am up for anything. I don't know. Let's do it right now together.
All right. Awesome. I have some ideas. I'll share them after the show.
Perfect.
Who would play you in a movie of your life? Because that could happen.
That absolutely could happen. In fact, the screenplay has been bandied about for Deep Dark Blue, so we may get to see that.
Oh, that's exciting. Would you play yourself?
I probably, if I could pass as a college student, actually, you know what? I'm not sure that I would.
Okay.
Boy, it would be difficult to go through it again, though I'd be honored to do it. If I could pass as a college student, I would do it just to be able to honor the story. And any other role I would love to do as well. You know, who would play me? That's a good question.
Okay.
Let's start the casting process and we'll find.
Well, if you are an actor and you think you'd be the right person to play Polo, write us.
Yes,
write
absolutely.
Us. Let us know. We're open to well-known people and people who are just starting out.
For sure.
Well, I want to thank you for coming and for sharing your story. I realize it's challenging, and know that in your story, you're going to help a lot of people, and you're going to change the way people listen and do things, and hopefully in the military as well. I really believe that. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget, we are going to have a link so you can find Polo Tate's book. And if you like and share the show, we're going to send a signed copy out to you. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.